What's going on, guys? Welcome to a very special episode of Renegade Jukebox on the Renegade Pop Culture Podcast Network. My name is Mike. I'll be your host this evening. Joining me, as always, is my co-host, Nick.
I technically am doing an impression. We're not doing this with webcams, but I'm doing my best Brad Delson impression because I got headphones on.
Nice. And making his Renegade Pop Culture debut, please welcome my friend Shaurya. How do you? I'm sorry if I mispronounced your last name. Shola.
Chabla. But thank you so much for having me, guys.
Yeah, thanks for joining. So today marks the release of Linkin Park's Meteora 20th Anniversary Edition. This is a pretty big deal as it's been teased for a couple months, starting with the release of a couple previously unreleased singles. But before we get too deep into that, I want to hear your guys' fond memories of hearing songs off this record for the first time. Shaurya, I want to start with you first. What was your introduction to Meteora, if not the band as at large?
My introduction to Meteora, actually, I do have to start with the band too because it sort of ties into it. Because I didn't get into Linkin Park until like 2006, and the random thing was I heard them for the first time during a guy who was doing tricks with a yo-yo, and he was playing In the End. And I was like, what song is he playing? This is awesome. And then I went on a deep dive and eventually listened to two songs from Meteora. Those were my introductions to this record. It was Somewhere I Belong and Numb. And I remember hearing those two because then a cousin of mine at the time was also getting into LP. So he's like, hey, there's these couple of songs which are really, really good. You should, give a look at them. And I remember hearing Somewhere I Belong and I had it on loop all the time. I thought that was a great song. It's first of all really catchy. It was really unique, and one of the first songs that I eventually ended up putting on like a Walkman that I had at the time, the digital Sony Walkman, and then eventually I got into the entire album as a whole. I heard Faint, and I heard Figure .09, and Nobody's Listening, and Breaking the Habit, etc., etc. Yeah, that covers that.
Awesome. And Nick, what about you?
Much like how I discovered many bands in my lifetime, I have much music to thank. This is the nu metal era, so at this point, any nu metal band was getting played on Much Music. Any band that was on Ozfest for whatever year was getting played on Much Music. So I literally knew of Linkin Park pretty much right from the beginning, right when One Step Closer got released as a single back in the day. I remember seeing all of the music videos for Hybrid Theory. So going straight into Meteora in 2003, I know a lot of the narrative around nu metal is that it was starting to die off by 2003. Considering our last jukebox episode was on Limp Bizkit's Results May Vary, but one thing that I believe I would have forgotten to have brought up, this album and Evanescence's Fallen were like the two outliers that were like the big hits, and they were nu metal bands. So and plus I have a lot of memories with this album too, just because of seeing all the music videos from it pretty much on release, seeing them on Much Music all the time, like I had said, and just seeing them all over the music news. And I was like, is this the band that I'm going to be, into for a long time? And then I got American Idiot the next year. And then it was all punk rock from there. And then after that, it was all thrash and death metal.
Nice. Yeah, my introduction to my introduction to Linkin Park started not on any rock radio station, but on our local pop station, which is like Kiss FM. They played in the End and pretty frequently. So that was kind of my first general exposure to the band, but I didn't really become a Linkin Park fan until Meteora, and that was when I saw the music video for Faint, and I'm like, oh, okay, so this is exactly the sound I was looking for at that time. But yeah, a lot of my nostalgia for this album has about as much to do with the album itself as two things: the music video, like all the music videos, and the live DVD live in Texas, which we'll get into more of that later. But first, I want to get to the album itself. 20 years later, how well do you think it holds up? Nick, I'll start with you.
I'm gonna be that guy because mostly I'm of the mindset. I think this is of the two new metal Linkin Park albums. I think that Meteora is better than Hybrid Theory. For me, I just personally like the songs more. Yeah, it does also scream 2003, but it doesn't feel as it's of its time, but it doesn't feel as of its time, kind of the way Hybrid Theory does. Hybrid Theory really is just coming off of like the tales of like Limp Bizkit and Korn and all of the bands that were just rising up from that entire Ozfest scene at that point back in the late 90s. And then this, I'm going to be honest, is also kind of my falling off point because I was not as into the later records, to be honest. Again, I got more into like Metallica, Slayer, Anthrax, Testament. That became more my alley. But, revisiting this, it kind of felt like revisiting an old childhood friend that I hadn't seen in a while. And, revisiting the music videos, it brought back as much as it did come out like during like a rough time in my childhood, this was one of the good things to come from it. I didn't personally have Live in Texas like Mike did, but I did jam it prior to recording this, so I do have a little bit to say about it in that sense. But no, I do think Meteora is a better album than Hybrid Theory, and we will be getting into why once we start talking about the actual songs. Yeah, that's how I feel about the record.
For the record, I agree with you that of their first two records, like Meteora is a more fulfilling listen from start to finish. Whereas with Hybrid Theory, I do love the album, but I will cherry pick songs more often than I will go listen to it front to back. Shaurya, what about you? Your thoughts on the record 20 years later?
I would say that of the two at the time, Hybrid Theory and this one, yeah, I think one of them is a little more like I understand why it's a little more iconic in a lot of ways and why it has more significance. But when I listen to Meteora, sometimes, at least this is my personal opinion, I don't feel like the time has passed. So when I'm listening to like I was listening to it today, and even though it's like from 2003, it doesn't. It feels like something that still feels very recent. It feels something like something that was just released today, which it technically was, but you know what I mean. And I don't know. I don't find myself cherry picking songs as much. In fact, most of the time, whenever I'm listening to Meteora, there are points where I want to cherry pick, and I'm like, okay, maybe I'll just listen to one song or two songs, maybe, and that's it. But then I find myself wanting to go back to the start and be like, well, no, let's go on this journey. Let's go from forward all the way to Numb. Let's do it. And then I would do that. And I don't feel like I regret that decision because it just all of it flows really, really well together. And there's a few understated tracks that come up, which we'll talk more about, I'm sure. But when it comes to Hybrid Theory, I feel like there's more of a nostalgia because you heard songs from that, from in so many different things at the time, and it was the favorite for a while among some of my friends as well. Although over the years, there's been a lot of comments that I've heard that have changed that, and in fact, a lot of them now say Meteor as their favorite. So I feel like it had a very delayed fuse in that regard. But I don't know. I think it's held up the test of time for sure.
One thing I want to say before we dive into the track list is I was watching an interview like the other day, and one thing that Mike Shinoda brought up, the main difference between Hybrid Theory and Meteora from a creative perspective is like, because Hybrid Theory was their debut, obviously they had a lot of input from, you know, like the record label and executives, but for Meteora they had a lot more creative control, which you can kind of tell that when you're listening to the two back to back.
Oh, no doubt about it. Like it again, it still does feel like it's coming out from the new metal period, but at the same time, there are at least risks being taken. It very much is them to some degree copying the formula, and I'll bring it up on one or two songs here, but I mean, they're copying the formula, but it's not like it's just 100% copying it either. There are some risks enough to give it that variety, so it's not just a cut and paste job.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
And there are points where when you're listening to Meteor, it feels like they're subverting themselves compared to Hybrid Theory, where it's like a song would start off and you're like, oh, it's gonna go like this because Pushing Me Away started like that in Hybrid Theory, for instance. But then it doesn't happen like that. It has its own ebb and flow, its own rhythm, and I love that about it. Actually, really, really do.
All right, so let's dive in. We begin with Forward, which, you know, it's a nice little 13-second ramp into what I consider the first, like the true beginning. Don't Stay.
Which,
And
Mike, you do know the rule of every new metal album. Every new metal album must have an intro for them to walk out on stage to.
you're right. It is law.
Law, written by Jonathan Davis and Fred Durst.
Anyway, Don't Stay is an awesome opening track. It does the best job of setting the tone for the rest of the record and really kicks things off on a high note.
Yeah, the energy's there. It when I say the guitar work and gives it that energy, like again, this is a new metal record, almost an alt rock record in some places, but you know, going on about the riffs, I'm trying not to talk about it like it's a Decapitated record or a Machine Head record, but kind of to what you said though, Mike, it does start it off with enough energy and keeps it on enough of a high note, and it's really Chester that's just the star of this song, kind of leading into the album. Like Somewhere I Belong was the first single off of this, but like Chester's kind of just leading the charge on song number 1.
Yep.
Because I mean, just I can only imagine that this would have gone over super well live, so I don't know why they wouldn't have opened with it more after they had finished behind touring this thing.
I agree. And I'll add a little bit more once we kind of talk about Live in Texas, but yeah, that live recording has like pretty much solidified in my head that this is the perfect way to open a set. Shaurya, you got anything to add?
I was actually gonna see if I could compare it to the second track of Hybrid Theory for a second, which was one step closer. And I was trying to think about like as a successor to that, if it sort of has that through line, and it does sound like a progression on. In fact, it has a almost similar like lead off, but but like it definitely shows the evolution pretty instantly. And I do consider it the first actual track of the album. I mean, the forward's like 13 seconds, like you said. So, and I think it's a great way to start it off. So in that way, if I want to look at it and say like how it compares to something like Paper Cut, we established the band with that one, but then like when you look at the evolution, even in those few years, it's like there's immediately this freshness to it, something that's more I think that really adds to how much I think it's held up.
Oh yeah. Yeah, even within like a few years, like you can really tell like they've come a long way in just that short time. So now we go to the first official single, "Somewhere I Belong," and judging by the music video, I can only imagine this resulted in at least 50% an increase in interest of the Gundam franchise. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh, 100%.
Mm.
But I mean, that added to the cool factor was that they were willing to embrace stuff like anime and nerdier stuff. It kind of made them seem more on the level than either most new metal or even like a lot of the post-grunge stuff that was like super jockish at that point. So yeah, I'd have it at least gave it a cool aesthetic to go with it, and we'll also be discussing the music videos. And rewatching the video for this took me back.
Yeah. Shaurya and I were talking on Twitter earlier, and I said music is pretty much the closest thing that we'll ever have to time travel. And yeah, watching the video for "Somewhere I Belong," and by the way, all of these videos have been remastered in HD, so they all look amazing. But watching these videos is pretty much the equivalent of taking a time machine back to 2003.
And plus, just it's an arena built song. You can't really get too mad at. I can't really get mad at a song that its intent is to be earwormy, but at the same time, it justifies the earworminess with like good lyrical content that, you know, isn't super whiny. Like, yeah, you could make the argument that a lot of Linkin Park's lyrics are just, "I had a bad childhood, insert reason number 15 here." But at the same time, just kind of knowing what we know about Chester's own personal history after his passing, it comes across as more genuine than a lot of stuff that was on the radio at that point, to me at least.
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
I think that aspect of his personal life especially became more apparent in later albums. I thought, I think, sorry, going on a detour for a second, I think it was especially eerie because I think very soon after he had passed, I was listening to "Leave Out All the Rest" on Minutes to Midnight, and if you listen to the lyrics of "Leave Out All the Rest" after that, it's chilling in a way because it's like sort of foreshadows it, and it's crazy. And then 10 years later, but I think there is that feeling throughout the entirety of their works now, especially with starting off even in Meteora, where it's like you can definitely hear that. Speaking of Gundam, yes, they were in the video of this one, but this was around this. But Reanimation dropped the same year, and the cover of that wasn't that Gundam?
Yeah.
At the very least, it's a Gundam inspired cover.
Right. So yeah, that was self-aware. They knew what they were doing.
Also, I'm going to be bringing this up a lot talking about this record. Just album flow, I think this is one of the strong points of it as well, because like I was saying about "Don't Stay," that's a really very much a Chester-driven song. But then Mike takes over the choruses for "Somewhere I Belong" and then lets Chester just kind of nail home the choruses on this one.
Something I really like about this reissue is even more so than like the disc version. I listened to this on Spotify, and all of the transitions between songs are absolutely seamless.
I thought that was one of the biggest improvements. In fact, we talked about this because one of the issues that I had with the previous issue, and then they did some remastering here and there because they wanted to single out certain tracks. The transitions were completely like gone, and they weren't really working as well. So I'm glad that they preserved that for this issue, because most of this album is gapless, and I do appreciate the fact that now you can really properly, get the entire experience with this one. It makes it much more listenable, I think.
Yeah.
I'm the guy that doesn't have Spotify and either buys the vinyl or buys the CD or, just outright downloads it. So I'm that guy. But to be honest, like I'm seriously debating on getting like the huge vinyl box set, which is why I actually was the one that brought up the idea of doing an episode on it, because I feel like it is kind of a big deal when you get in, like when you actually think about it. We'll be discussing this when we get to the unreleased songs that have been released as singles, but I mean, it is kind of a throwback in a way, kind of like the situation with Nirvana's Greatest Hits album that came out, I want to say a year before this record came out. I'll
Yeah.
get into why once we talk about the unreleased tracks, but to kind of get back on Somewhere I Belong. Now, there's a perfectly good reason why this song basically carried this album to the top of the charts, because I mean, this was Linkin Park's first #1 album on Billboard.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like just by listening to this song, like it's just completely airtight from like its opening notes to like the ending. It's just perfectly constructed from start to finish.
Anyways, I say, how would you guys feel about moving on to the next song? Which I would personally argue, if you wanted to say, like, I'm kind of teetering that line. If I really want to call Linkin Park a metal band, I'm more at that point where I just flat out just call them a rock band, really. Again, especially considering that they move away from this kind of style on future records at this rate. But I mean, if you had to say one song in particular is the most metal track on the record, it's Lying From You.
Yeah.
I would agree, but I think the next track pushes it a little bit further. But both like having both of these like back to back, that's a strong run right there.
Also, I'm just reading up on the Wikipedia page. Apparently, I had no idea that this was sampled in this. Apparently, it contains a sample of a car burning out.
Oh, great. Of course it does.
Hey, I like cool little bits of that, so that way I can go back and just be like, oh, that's a cool sample I've never heard on this song or on this record that I've heard millions of times before. You know, I like digging for details like that.
I
But
honestly, now that you mention that, like it's hard to unhear it when like once you know where that sample came from.
I'm trying to like mentally pinpoint. I think it's just when the guitars kick in. Like I'm just mentally picturing it right now, so I'm not even sure if it's at the right point. But I mean, to kind of go back to our results may vary episode, Mike, I was just thinking this re-listening to this song. Musically, this song is also a really simple song, kind of like how Eat You Alive was, but whereas Eat You Alive lyrical content wise was just very scuzzy, very creepy, and it's more Fred Durst whining and complaining about Britney Spears dumping him. The guitar riff, yeah, it's simple, but it works for its intent and delivery, especially for a new metal riff. And plus, again, the lyrical content at least feels like it's coming from a more genuine place, I feel, and it kind of just keeps that momentum and energy going in the track list.
Yeah. That's all I feel from this song. Like, just, you know, structurally it's simple, but emotionally it's like it's heavy. You kind of you can feel exactly where Mike and Chester are coming from.
Plus, I can only imagine the pit would have started as soon as the guitars kicked in, especially listening to the Live in Texas version. I was just going like, okay, this would have been cool to see live.
Yeah.
Also, going back on the whole Gundam thing, they totally use Gundams as like their stage props promoting this thing.
As you should.
Exactly. Everything is made cooler with giant robots.
Absolutely. I think it's why I like reanimation. Like, I saw the cover and I was like, this is great. This is already a robot on the cover. I love this.
Except weird too that this was also released to radio, but honest to God, like, did either of you guys hear this on the radio back in the day? Because I didn't.
I did, but not in my hometown. There are like other there were stations like out of state that played it, but this isn't really counted as one of the singles.
I'm trying to think if I heard it on the radio, if it ever played on. Don't remember this song playing on the radio. No.
Okay, yeah. I don't feel like the weird one in the bunch then, because like it's weird that it gets its own Wikipedia page, but it was never officially released as a single. I guess you could argue that is kind of the staying power behind this record in particular, but I don't really know what to say. But I would put it in my, like, if I'm picking favorite songs on the record already, I'm putting this up there.
But I would also like to say though that at the time this came out, I was in India at the time. That's where I'm from. So when we didn't have too many English channels at the time. We have more now, I think. So I think it was a little pick and choose in terms of what played and what didn't. So that also
for sure.
Yeah, that also could have factored into it. I mean, hey, listen, man, we had Bollywood music, tons of it. That's what played mostly. But I do remember, but I still remember when that one song with Chad Kroeger went loud with Spider-Man. That played all over the place.
Oh, yeah, that one was another inescapable one.
Yeah.
The less we talk about how we could have gotten a great Stone Temple Pilots song, technically it is on topic because Chester was in Stone Temple Pilots at one point. How we could have gotten a great Stone Temple Pilots song, instead we got stuck with a Nickelback song for our good Spider-Man movie.
Right. Oh, well.
The joys of complaining about something from 20 years ago that we have no control over.
But they said a hero can save us. I'm not going to stand in your way. I'm just sorry. I'm
not. Well, let's just talk about the next song, because at least jamming this record is better than hearing any second of Nickelback sludge.
Hit the Floor is one of my personal favorite tracks, and it's just kind of cool to like this at the time. This is probably as heavy as they would go with like a chorus, and hearing it live on one of the later discs in this collection was also cool, because they, as far as I know, they've never had they never released like any live recordings of Hit the Floor before, so hearing the Nottingham version for the first time kind of solidified this as one of my favorites.
Actually, this is what. Oh, sorry. Please go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was just gonna say this was actually one of my personal favorites that I don't feel like gets talked about enough, because I really like this song. I think it's first of all, it's catchy as hell. Like you recognize the opening notes instantly. Second, and it's one that I often like. In fact, one of the cherry-picked songs that you talk about when it comes to this album every now and then. This was one of them that I would constantly like play every now and then, just randomly. Like I'd be walking down the street and just the floor starts playing. Yeah, I really like this one. That's all I want to say.
For me, it just kind of gets in and gets out in the track list. One thing I will say about this is that it does continue the interplay of Chester and Mike really well. But other than that, for me, as good as it is in the context of the record, for me, it just kind of gets in and gets out.
That is a fair criticism, and as an extension of the whole record is only like 36 minutes and 35 seconds. Like as great as this is, it is also pretty lean in terms of material.
But at least we can say that there's no fat that needed to be trimmed from it. Not one of the things that I will say also, again, just in terms of album flow, is that as much as there are songs that we're probably all three of us going to have like individual favorites, there's not one moment that I'm just going like, you could have cut this and you could have saved an extra 5 minutes. Like not 1 minute am I sitting here going like, okay, you're just eating up time and wasting my time with this drony ballad, but instead it's like, no, get in, Get Out has riffs, has at least a good connecting chorus and bridge. I can at least get into it. Yeah, for me though, I do kind of like Easier to Run, even though I will say, like, kind of like what I was saying earlier, though, if we are going to try to make the whole copying the formula argument, if any song was the closest thing to Crawling on this album, I would say it's this one.
Really, this one and not Numb.
Uh, from a musical standpoint, not from like a lyrical content standpoint.
Fair.
For me, a lot of the music is driving this kind of nostalgic feeling for me. Like as soon as I just kind of hear those cleanly plucked guitar notes in the intro, I kind of can't help but go like, this didn't come out during like the early years of my childhood, like pre-elementary school or anything, but you know, it kind of is one of those things that's like it just kind of takes you back.
Yeah. Like I know we're using the word nostalgia a lot to describe, you know, going back to this album, but like sonically Easier to Run just kind of sounds like nostalgia, you know?
Yeah, that's a fair assessment, especially just my thing with a lot of Linkin Park's longevity. A lot of it is nostalgia, I think, because personally, what are the albums that most people talk about in terms of their catalog? It's always Hybrid Theory and Meteora. You know, you can have your favorites amongst the later albums, and you know, as much as I'm just gonna kind of be blunt with my own personal feelings, a lot of the later records don't really personally connect with me. If they connect with other people, great, all good, go enjoy them. I won't begrudge anybody for enjoying them, but like just for my own personal perspective, most of the Linkin Park conversations are always Hybrid Theory and Meteora. Yeah.
That's fair. In fact, before we started off, I was going to say my favorite one was actually Living Things, which came out in 2012, probably. But
Hey, all cool, man.
No. It's one of those things where I love that album, but I also understand why later years for Linkin Park did not work for everybody because it's just not. It is a major departure from this stuff and from the Hybrid Theory and Meteor stuff. So I get that. But I'm not going to I'm not going to downplay the original because it's how we got there. It's how they were experimenting at.
And to kind of add to your point, which I think is a completely fair perspective, I can hear a little bit of later records in some of these songs in particular, like especially during a lot of the pre-chorus sections, during the If I Could Change I Would bits, you can kind of hear little bits of robot-y electronic sound effects, which kind of does hint at stuff that they would do on things like 1,000 Suns or Living Things. So, you know, I do get it. And again, I get it from even just a commercial standpoint because, like, let's also just be honest, Linkin Park is a commercial band. Like, I don't expect them to sound like Aborted or Cannibal Corpse or anything, but at the same time, nu metal was basically on its way out. I think that the later records, I think they just tried to do what they could to kind of transition away from that style, but you know, again, even if it's something that I don't agree with, I can at least understand it more than I did when I was a kid per se. That makes sense.
No, absolutely.
One thing I want to say before we get back into the record is the highest compliment I can give the band in terms of how they've evolved their sound beyond these first two records is it's all genuine. It's all in the genuine interest of, you know, experimentation, trying something new, not wanting to stay boxed in to one particular genre. So like you two mentioned, like everyone is going to have their opinions on their later catalog, but at the very least they do have a home base in their first two records, and that's probably why you're not necessarily going to see 20th anniversary versions of everything, but these two are as highly regarded for a reason.
Yeah, I doubt you're going to see a Hunting Party 20th anniversary. Like,
as much as I would personally would love that.
mhm.
I get if they decline that decision.
I mean, hey,
Yeah,
let's reconvene in 11 years, you know.
Also, just purely because like that ended up being their lowest charting album at that point.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, but let's just hop back into the record because we get one of the other big singles off of this album. And I have a hysterical story, so I'll let you guys kind of take over for the first little bit.
I there is not really much left for me to say about Faint that everyone else in the world hasn't already said. But I think just to prove the point of how great the song is listen to every single version of it live. Even when it's like not even the whole band. Like I can't remember what year it was, but one year on Warped Tour, Sum 41 did a cover while Mike Shinoda was on stage with them, and it's still.
I think that was somewhere in Europe. Sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but I think that was like years after Chester had passed, actually.
Yeah, sounds about right. It might have been like 2019 or something, but yeah, that's just proof positive that this song is just an absolute banger.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, if you guys are cool, I've got a really hilarious story about this song.
Go for it.
And
yeah,
and for me, it's not even so much out of a it's not even me trying to make fun or like crack jokes at the song or anything, because like I enjoy it. Whenever I hear it, I'm immediately taken back to my childhood, and I remember seeing the music video, which I've got to say, after rewatching all of these music videos, this is probably my second favorite of the four, if I'm being honest, mostly just because the way it just intercuts between the crowd having the band silhouetted and then the last chorus of the song, you get to see them fully lit up and the crowd then, like, that's cool.
Yeah.
But no, I have a really hilarious story about this song, actually. So have either of you two Mike, I'm positive, knows about this store, but you guys know the chain of stores called HMV, right?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, then I don't need to explain what that is. So basically, I worked for the one of the Canadian locations here in Edmonton. So what happens is my manager one day is like, I'm getting really sick of all of the pop stuff being played nonstop over and over and over again, Nick. Can you go pick me a really heavy record to play? And I'm like, at this point, I'm just, I'm thinking like, man, I couldn't get away with playing like Children of Bodom or Lamb of God. But I was like, oh, what can I pick that's, not going to have any swearing on it, but, kind of gives the room some energy, let's say. So I was just kind of going through the metal section, and I was going like, I can't really think of anything that, is heavy, but is going to get people kind of more excited and a more energetic mood. Then I just looked over and I was like, Meteora doesn't have any swearing on it. I'm going to go pick that. And obviously whatever was playing all of the CDs, the CD changer, it basically put everything on shuffle. It didn't play it in sequence. So what happens is, as soon as I put that album in, the first song that comes on is Faint, and then everybody's like, oh, good pick. Then my manager, because it's a 2-floor store, he ends up going upstairs, right?
Mm-hmm.
So then it gets to the hear me out, now you're gonna listen to me like it or not part, and then one of the supervisors is like, what are you doing putting this on? What are you doing putting on something with screaming? This isn't work appropriate. And I'm like, whoa, hey, our manager literally told me to go pick an album to, kind of boost everybody's mood. He told me to do it. And then they're like, yeah, right, sure. Then I'm like, okay, call him down. And then he came down and was like, yeah, I totally gave him the okay to do this. So, needless to say, the album didn't get played the rest of the day.
That's great.
Yeah, to be honest, I couldn't listen to it for the longest time because I was just kind of going, Oh God. Remember that one time that I got in crap from somebody, but from somebody on the same level as me, giving me crap for what a manager told me to do? But no, that it's just one of those funny memories associated with songs that we all tend to have. So I thought it was a perfect time to bring it up.
Yeah, no, I love that story for sure. Mine was just a friend screaming at me, telling me, "Listen to Fate." So there you go.
Hey, hey, the song is literally screaming at you to listen to him, like it or not. So hey, he's just doing what Chester said to do. Good work.
Yeah, no, I'm very. It worked, and I did listen to it, so he must be very happy.
But I mean, it's a jam of a tune. Again, I just get nothing but childhood nostalgia listening to it.
Same.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't have anything else to really add. So, do you guys want to hop into the next track?
Yes, this one is Figure 9, and yeah, kind of like Faint. It keeps that energy going through the lyrics and like the guitar riff, all of it keeps like the energy. That's just something that I love about this record is when it wants to be heavy, it can be heavy. When it needs to slow down, it slows down. But this is a song that is the right amount of heavy.
Mm-hmm. It's
For
actually
me,
my favorite one. Sorry, go
oh,
on.
really?
Yeah, but you first.
No, if it's your favorite song on the record, I'm letting you go
No,
off. I was
I'm
actually going
good.
to say something else.
No, I'm gonna wait. But you go ahead.
Oh, I was actually going to say if Easier to Run is like the closest thing to crawling on this album, this for me, especially I don't really want to call it a breakdown section, but mostly just because I just associate breakdowns with, just open chord chugs at this rate. But like, no, the breakdown section, the keep away from me bit, that totally is just screaming one step closer to me. So I would say not in terms of like singles, it's the one step closer of the album, but like just in terms of like music and delivery, it is for me.
Yeah, that's totally fair. And again, we will talk about Live in Texas in a bit, but for now, this is also one of the highlights from that recording.
Mm-hmm. Should I go on?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, I was gonna wait. I was like, let that sink in. Yeah, so I do agree. It is very much in line with something like One Step Closer. It sounds so close to that in a way. But I guess it's sort of a rooting for the underdog sort of approach that I had to it because you have something like Faint, which has been described. Mike said it also. It's an absolute banger, right? Like it's great. It's a really great song. But so what do you follow that up with? So for a while I remember being apprehensive towards it because I thought there's no way. There's no way you follow it up with something that's as good, right? Or something that's as interesting. We'll see. And then I heard Figure 109 and then I don't know, I really, really fell in love with it instantly. It felt like it felt like a proper mix of certain things, and in some ways I found it to be somewhat of a tune up, like an oil change from One Step Closer. So it felt like the best of that, and then it also felt the best of like the louder LP songs that you've come to know and love at the time. So I don't know, just felt like a nice small blend of that. In fact, every time it comes to an end, it's like, oh, let's go back and listen to that. That's pretty cool. Because it does have that same ebb and flow. It's like it starts off and then there's that one segment where it's just Chester basically screaming at you. So yeah, I don't know. I think it's a nice balance.
To totally build off of what you just said, again, going back to kind of my point about how Don't Stay opens the record and then going into Somewhere I Belong, where, finally Mike shows up. Like the interplay between Chester and Mike here is probably another one of the strongest highlights of the entire record as an experience.
Mm-hmm.
That's my feeling about it.
These two really do work so well off each other. Like whether it's like their harmonies with just clean vocals or that interplay, it's like they just have like the right rhythm.
Mm-hmm.
And now for something completely different, unless you want any final thoughts before we move on.
I was gonna move on, but yeah, that was probably the best transition possible because next song has the best music video.
Oh,
Mm-hmm.
unquestionably.
Mm-hmm.
So apparently for years they did not play Breaking the Habit at all, like not even during like promotion for this album, which is shocking considering like this won like MTV awards back in the day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So
why is that? I was kind of curious too, because I had a friend at the time who was really into Linkin Park, and this is one of the songs that he would constantly like sing to himself. Like every time we knew him, we like, ran into him, and especially the chorus line on this, and that's kind of surprising to me because every now and then I'd ask a fan like, "Do you guys like this song, Breaking the Habit?" They're like, "Yeah, we love it," and you barely hear it. It was very confusing to me.
yeah, this is one of the few cases where I don't want to sound like punny or like, just I don't know where I'm going with the sentence. I I kind of feel that this song is where it starts to deviate a little bit from the formula, if that makes any sense. Like it
Mm.
still sounds like Linkin Park and everything, but subtly it does kind of hint at future directions to some extent. It's the least new metal of the songs that are on the album of all 12 of these tracks, not counting the intro track. It's the least new metal of the bunch, but at the same time that kind of benefits the song itself. Because I mean, it's really Chester just carrying most of it with a lot of electronic work from
Hmm.
Mr. Hahn.
Mm-hmm.
I also think it's kind of hard to divorce this song from, well, the music video for sure, but also just like the experience of the album. It is just kind of hard. I can kind of understand to some extent why like this doesn't really show up a lot like during live sets recent until like their later years. But yeah, it's a very interesting song, like listening to it at the time, but since then it has become a lot of people's favorite.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, in my case, it's a lot of it is my case because of the music video, which, for those who do not know, this is one of the few that is not directed by Actually, Mr. Hahn is involved. I take it back. I should pre-read Wikipedia before I open my mouth. But
Mm.
the animation was done by the same studio that did the anime segment in Kill Bill Volume 1, which it actually has a lot of the band being rotoscoped in animation, which gives it this really killer looking style to it, which this is like well over a year after the album has been out. Like just think
Yep.
about that.
So this was animated by the Japanese studio Gonzo, and while Mr. Han was one of the directors, like the actual animation stuff that was done by like you said, the director of that animated segment, Kazuto Nakazawa. And yeah, I remember, I can't remember if it was like Fuse TV or MTV2, but they played a behind the scenes look at like the making of this video, and it was just really cool to see how this project came together.
Yeah, and for years I thought that, for whatever reason, I actually saw the music video for this song before I ever even saw Kill Bill Volume 1. And I actually remember because I wasn't allowed to watch R-rated movies until I was at least in my last year of middle school at that point. So I remember just, being out of bed and just hearing some noise from the TV. And then I saw this animation that reminded me quite a bit of the Breaking the Habit video. And I was like, huh, this looks really cool. But the voice sounded really familiar to me. And then it cuts to the back of the pickup truck and it's Uma Thurman. And I'm like, holy shit, I just watched part of Kill Bill Volume 1 when I wasn't supposed to be. This is awesome.
Mm-hmm. I think I had that similar experience with a totally different thing where it's like, oh, I was not supposed to watch R-rated movies, and then I was like, oops. But yeah, it always is a music video. That's how they get you, you know.
Yep.
Although
I saw.
although to kind of, bring up more movie stuff, I totally did sneak Terminator and like Army of Darkness behind my mom's back. So, universe kind of balanced, yet
Mm.
balance was balanced, yet was unbalanced. Let's put it that way.
What I sneaked, I think it was 300. That's what I sneaked, and I told them.
Nice.
I actually told them straight up I straight up was like, I heard it was a fun movie, so I just watched it. They were like, that's rated R, right? I was like, I'm not gonna go to war. Like, I'm not about to kill people. Like, we're fine.
I'm not going to school and kicking people, screaming, "This is Sparta."
I wanted to, but I couldn't do.
But that's neither here nor there, Mom.
Yeah.
But no, this, I would say I don't know. It's kind of hard picking a best single though from this album, but I mean, like, this would have to be high up there between the three of us, right?
It's at least number 2 or like no, I'm gonna say it's number 2. If we're ranking the music videos, it's unquestionably number 1. But purely the music, yeah, I was dancing at first between number 2 and 3, but the more I think about it, it's got to be number 2.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to agree with you on that one.
Yeah, it's in the top 3.
Okay, I'm gonna ask you guys this because I genuinely don't remember seeing the video for From the Inside until today. Like, this is another one that I don't know. Did it just pass me by and I just genuinely don't remember seeing it?
The thing about the video for From the Inside is I don't think this ever really charted in the US, at least not compared to the other ones. And honestly, if I did see this on TV, it was like kind of during the off hours, not necessarily like any sort of prime time block.
Yeah, I can picture that because I mean, you did have stuff like MTV2 at the time as well, and stuff just airing super late at night. I get it.
Yeah, that's usually late night MTV is when you really got to see some of the stuff that you wanted to see, especially if it was niche, like smaller stuff, like videos. That's usually when I tuned in. Unfortunately, much to my parents' disappointment, but because it was late at night, I was in school. And so when we were talking about much music, I was like, yeah, but I grew up on MTV. When they actually were about music, apparently MTV was about the music at one point in time. I don't know. People don't know that anymore.
Yeah, but nonetheless, the actual like song itself, it's a good connector to the last 3 songs on the album, but it's not the one. I don't think it's necessarily one that I revisit as much as some of the others.
I describe it as a cruise control song, compared to what came before and what succeeds it.
Yeah, that's fair. I feel like I don't feel critical enough to call it filler, but at the same time, yeah, I feel like calling it a cruise control song is a completely fair analysis, let's say.
And not to keep bleeding my Live in Texas thoughts, but one thing that's kind of fun watching the actual footage on the DVD is there's at one point, I don't know if you were aware of this, but Lars Ulrich from Metallica comes up on stage with like Hulk hands and I think like cat ears or something, and he's just kind of like messing around with the band.
I'm
reading the Wikipedia page. I do see that he did that.
Should have put that on the album in some way. I don't know. 20th anniversary.
Yeah, that man. We'll get into it when you're talking about Live in Texas, but man, that would have been a tour I would have loved to have seen back in the day.
Yeah.
Anyways,
last thing I'll say about From the Inside is like more so than the actual music video, just that image on a loop is pretty much what I associate with the song now.
Hey, that's fair. The next 2 songs are also arguably some of the least nu metal songs on this record too.
Mhm.
Now we're getting into Mike Shinoda's pre-Fort Minor stuff.
Mm.
Yeah.
Which I do find the first one of these a bit underrated. But anyway, go on, guys.
Nobody's listening is, you could argue that this is pretty much the proto Fort Minor track. Like
Mhm.
it still has a bit of, the rest of the band. Like with the chorus, there's a little bit of crunch with Brad's guitar. But it's otherwise constructed more just like a standard hip hop track.
Mhm.
Yeah, it is the most just traditionally hip hop sounding Linkin Park song without, just going straight into stuff that would have been on something like Reanimation. But at the same time, again, I would feel too critical to call the last chunk of this album filler. But at the same time, like, again, Cruise Control does feel like a good way to kind of describe these next few songs. But I mean, at least I can say the sampling's really cool. And this is also the second time that Jay-Z lyrics have been just outright quoted on an album, aside from the Eminem show.
Mhm.
Oh yeah. I don't know how much of Collision Course we'll end up discussing, but it is on record that Shinoda is a Jay-Z fan.
Yeah, they're like he basically just outright quotes him and then just cuts into the rest of the verses. But now it's
Mhm.
a cool sounding rap song, but Session though, one of the cool things about that track is that actually won a Grammy for like best instrumental piece, I believe.
Now
Mhm.
that is awesome.
Mhm. And it's also, this is how I got to know about it properly. In fact, it's also the opener to the soundtrack of The Matrix Reloaded.
That's right.
Yeah, because
And
that came out the same year. Now I'm
yes, it
remembering that.
did. And then it leads into a horrible Marilyn Manson song. But the opening was great. It was great hearing that. It's nice to know that in the history books, it's like Linkin Park was in The Matrix. So.
But I
That
mean,
that just that just kind of ties into their nerd cred, that they're associated with one of the biggest action franchises of that time.
Yeah, I mean, of all time, honestly. I mean, the first Matrix is considered like one of the greatest movies ever made. It is. It still has that street cred. I think it's going to change that. But and Reloaded got a lot of love, especially as time went on. But like, it does definitely time. That whole 2003 was a really pivotal Linkin Park year, as we've now established so well, pop culture wise.
Also, to kind of give some of more of the music a bit of credit, I don't think we've talked about Mr. Han as much as we probably should have throughout most of this episode, because like this is kind of his cure for the itch of the album.
It is, and we do need to give Mr. Han a lot more credit, because he is a very pivotal member of the band, especially on these first two records.
Yeah, like Cure for the Itch was such a great song. But yeah, but yeah, I don't think Linkin Park. The couple of people you absolutely need. He's one of them. Sorry, Nick, you were saying.
Oh no, I think we've pretty much said all we really need to. Just, I think throughout most of this record, he really gets to show off. That's the thing that kind of makes Meteora the better album for me. They just kind of take what made the last album work and become a hit and just kind of build on that foundation. And, I do really think that Mr. Han does add a lot of more than just let's just have a DJ and have him do keyboards and have the song sound super poppy, but also sound aggressive at the same time. It actually feels like it benefits the song rather than just let's just have a DJ part here because we can and it's the sound of the time.
Yeah, like there's nothing extraneous about his like involvement. He is like baked into the DNA of the band.
Absolutely.
And now, shockingly, we are on the last song in the record because this thing is a pretty tight half an hour experience. So, yeah, we're officially on the last track. And also, arguably, would you guys argue that this might be their biggest song?
I would not argue it. I would say it, but Mike, you.
Okay,
Yeah,
cool. Because
no,
yeah,
it
this
is.
is the big one.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah, just
I think
yeah.
this might have actually been the first song I heard off the record. Like I got to the other singles later, but this is like, I mean, this it's kind of proof of how big the song was, that this is what got my attention before the earlier ones.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it is kind of weird just knowing that Numb would go on to be the biggest song of their career at this point. But I mean, they are kind of just riding this nonstop high at this point, and kind of really does feel justified.
Mm-hmm.
Actually feels earned. And plus, like, for as personal of lyrical content as it is, again, I've gone on about how much I don't like a lot of like the whiny "my girlfriend broke my heart, I'm sad and depressed, so I had a bad childhood" kind of music that was super popular on the radio at the time, like your 3 Days Graces, that kind of stuff. And this, as especially knowing what we know now after Chester's passing, just his own personal life experiences, at least this genuinely, it feels like it's coming from more of a genuine place and happened to
Mm-hmm.
become a big hit rather than just, we're going to write something that feels like big budget drama, basically.
Mm-hmm. I mean, like, how exactly? Sorry, how exactly do you mean? Like,
For me, I always just found stuff like 3 Days Grace to just be whining about nondescript problems. That's kind of always been my feeling, especially about a lot of post-grunge type stuff. I feel like it just got popular because of, oh, we can write a nondescript song about going through some personal trouble, but they don't ever say specifically what it is.
mm-hmm.
But then you
Yeah.
have something like Numb, where it's like, oh, Chester actually went through the things he's actually talking about. He's giving actual
Mm-hmm.
descriptions.
Yeah, my
It's
bad. I
not,
lost focus. Sorry. I lost focus for a second. Yeah, that's you're absolutely right. Sorry, go on.
yeah, it's not just, 3 Days Grace and it's boohoo, I hate everything about you, about this
Mm-hmm.
nondescript relationship. It's like, you have a song like Numb where Chester actually is, it seems to be about him just writing about his life
Mm-hmm.
at this
And
Yeah.
it's
point.
the yeah, and it's also the thing that sort of takes it away from like this aspect of where someone's like, oh, they're just another emo band. It's like, no, they're not. It's not as simple as that. Like it started where you did start to see the meaning for sure. And I feel like this just became more and more apparent. I think that's why it was such a success because it felt real. It felt there's a couple of songs like that actually did that, and one of them was this. The other one was because it also came out in 2003. It was that reworked Crawling, the one on Reanimation.
Okay.
Yeah, I was reading a comment. In fact, someone actually told a story online. If I'd like to share, if no one minds. There was someone who was saying, how they were going through something really, really tough at the time, and the fact that this song was like super helpful in sort of like processing that. Like it was this and that version of Crawling because those felt so real and relatable. Like and it suddenly just explores so well, like exactly what this pain in life is. And I don't know. I think that's why it just skyrocketed more and more. It's why to this day so many people talk about it. It's not just some other song which is like life sucks. I'm so sad.
Yeah, no, that's completely apt here. And also that just kind of, I really feel like it also kind of builds in the music video as well. Like
Mm-hmm.
it, if Breaking the Habit what didn't have the best video, man, it's a tough call because I feel like a lot of videos from the new metal period, I can't help but go like, oh yeah, right, this one was really awesome. Oh, the Crazy Town video was god awful, but it was hilariously bad at least. No, with this one, it kind of just takes the lyrical content and just builds a video around that, and it just
Mhm.
works super well.
And
Mm-hmm.
even just like the the basic shots of the band playing the song, the emotions still like you still feel the emotions radiating off the screen with with Chester belting it out and everyone else like, accompanying him. There's a reason why this song exploded the way it did.
Mm-hmm.
And it is kind of the perfect way to cap off the entire album if you think about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, as a closer to the record, I don't really see a better choice for an album closer.
And I guess with that in mind, as much of a bummer of a song as Numb is, and as nostalgic as we can get about Numb, I'm going to let Mike get super excited about this one because he's brought it up throughout the majority of the episode. And I feel like I've listened to it, but I mean, you have more experience with it, so I'm letting you have the floor.
So, in 2004, Linkin Park released a CD and DVD package called Live in Texas, which is a video recording of two nights, two shows, one in I think Austin and one in Dallas, from Metallica's Summer Sanitarium tour in 2003.
I actually have the Wikipedia open. It's Houston and Irving, Texas.
Thank you. So the lineup that for that tour was Mudvayne, Deftones, Linkin Park, Limp Bizkit, and Metallica.
I would have loved to have seen that back in the day, especially to see how bad Fred Durst would have gotten booed.
Yeah, that would have been amusing. But so I first watched this DVD on a vacation back in 2005. We were overseas in I think Barcelona or Madrid. I picked up this album from the record store, watched the entire live set, and this was around the time that I knew, from the bottom of my heart that Linkin Park was going to be one of my favorite bands of all time, because first of all, the production of both the concert footage and just the mixing of the audio was just really well done. But also you just kind of, even though you're not physically there, you still kind of feel the energy of the performance of each of these songs. And Nick, I know you just listened to this recently. Are there any single tracks that stand out to you the most, other than stuff that we've talked about earlier?
I'm gonna be honest, I didn't watch the DVD, or in this case just the footage that's been posted to the band's official YouTube page. I mostly just stuck to the weird CD version that basically kind of nerfs this concert into 12 songs instead of the standard 17 on the DVD. But I will say this, at least in the Meteora box set that just came out at the time of this recording, they actually do have all 17 tracks basically on CD and on 2 LP black vinyl, I believe. Standard stuff for vinyl reissues. But for me, I would say probably the way Mike gets the crowd amped up during Place for My Head is really cool. Aside from just stuff off of Meteora, yeah, I would have to listen to it some more to really give too much of a comprehensive opinion. I do think that the band sounds great, especially they sound on point and exactly like the original recordings. That would sound really cool, but I do wish there was a little bit more of some, crowd in the mix.
Yeah, that might be my one complaint with some of the mixing. Like you do get to hear the crowd in between songs, which is nice. But as far as the live arrangements of the songs, that for me is the highlight. Outside of the Meteora stuff, I like how they have kind of spiked tracks like Paper Cut and A Place for My Head, making them a little bit more heavy than they are in on the record. And then just the energy of tracks like Figure 9 and like and Faint, those sound great live. And then sure, you might like this. The Reanimation version of Pushing Me Away is another highlight.
Yeah, I heard it today earlier. I did not know that was that where it was first performed before the album dropped?
I don't know if it's the first time they performed it, but it's starting to feel like that version is sort of replaced the original.
It was released as actually no, it was the remix of Points of Authority that was released as a single, but I mean, it borderline is a fan favorite, I would say, at this rate.
Yeah, I would have to agree.
Like, controversial opinion, if I may drop one, I think it actually supersedes the original Pushing Me Away. I think it's damn good.
No, I very much agree with that. Like, I still like the original Pushing Me Away, but this one just it just feels more. I don't know. It just has that extra pizzazz, you know.
I'll tell you what it is, and I thought about that for a while as to why it was, and I think it's the chorus. I like the chorus of this version more than the original.
There we go. That's what it is.
And also a big contributing factor why we decided to do this podcast for a reissue of an album. We kind of get to experience a little bit of I said this earlier, a little bit of a Nirvana greatest hits situation in mind then, because we've got unreleased material and it doesn't feel supplemental at all.
No, if anything, like it feels like a treasure trove. For those who are not Linkin Park Underground members, disc 4 of this 6-disc collection is all of their LPU rarities. So for the first time, you get to hear demos like A6, the demo for Somewhere I Belong, which was called Pretty Bird, and then Mike Shinoda and Motion Man have their own little song called Standing in the Middle, which I thought was pretty cool.
But the big selling point is unreleased music with unheard vocals done by Chester back in 2003. Fully remixed, fully remastered for 2023.
Yeah. This definitely took the world by surprise. Hearing Lost for the first time, I think they released it in like February. Maybe early, like late January, early February. It seriously felt like taking a time machine back to 2003.
My analogy I go with is I feel like I just met a childhood friend I had not seen in years, and I'm actually happy to see them for the first time in years. I'm not embarrassed and I'm not dreading the experience. I'm just going like, man, it is nice to see you again.
It almost makes you like it definitely made you forget for a moment of the reality of it. It's like, oh man, because I keep saying this every single time I talk about LB these days, especially on social media. I'm like, this is how he lives on. It's like he never left.
Yeah.
I also do feel like it is kind of the most appropriate way for the band to continue. Because I mean, just to kind of be honest, I don't think that the band can really continue without Chester fronting them. I mean, I know Mike is also the front man technically too, but I do think that the way that he's kind of preserving Chester's legacy and kind of preserving these earlier albums is the most appropriate way to do it.
Yeah. Like
I think. Sorry, go on.
I'm trying to think in my head of like all of the worst case scenarios if say they did continue without Chester. Who's to say like well, first of all, nobody can replace Chester Bennington. There is only one of him. So probably the most obvious worst case scenario would be, the new guy would forever be caught in Chester's shadow. But then also the band would just like they would just have a completely different DNA. It wouldn't it just wouldn't be the same.
Mm-hmm.
So I think they made the right call with the decision that they've not even formally made, but more just like we all just collectively agreed we're not going to get like a new Linkin Park album anytime soon. So this is like the next best option.
Mm-hmm. It's the Wakanda Forever idea. It's like you're not gonna get another Chadwick Boseman, so we're not gonna try it again. We're gonna try something different. But like yeah. Sorry, weird analogy. But yeah, it's look, I don't know. Maybe some way down the line, it's really up to them. It's up to Mike Shinoda. It's up to all the other existing band members. If they want to try something different with someone else, they will. If not, they won't. It really is. It's their call to make. I think otherwise, for now, this call where they try to keep it more to the original spirit of the band and what made them so special in the first place. I think that's a good way to stick with it for now.
I was actually just going to hop in and say, I don't think the whole Wakanda Forever analogy you were going for there. No, I think that's actually pretty well done. I was going to say something similar. I was actually going to use Queen as an example, kind of how, you know, you're very obviously not going to try to replace Freddie Mercury at all. But if you are to kind of have Queen continue in any kind of capacity, just doing like tribute tours with like fill-in vocalists like Paul Rogers from Bad Company or Adam Lambert even, I mean, I do think that that would make the most possible sense if they ever decided to go that route. But that's a huge if they decide to go that route to begin with. But what do you guys think of a lot of the unreleased stuff? I only really have opinions on Lost and Fighting Myself. So, I mean, if you guys have any like particular favorites of the unreleased tracks, I'd say go for it.
Until I listened to the fourth and sixth discs, Fighting Myself was a song that I had on repeat constantly. And then the album came out and More the Victim has replaced Fighting Myself as like that being the favorite. When you do listen to it, I'm very curious to know what you think, because to me it kind of sounds like in like a song that would fit sort of in between Meteora and Minutes to Midnight. Like it's got the crunch of Meteora, and Mike's rapping verses are, you know, very tight and very well performed, but then instrumentally it sounds a bit closer to like some of their later material on the heavier side, not necessarily the One More Light side.
Okay, I see what you're meaning.
Yeah. Actually, I think a better comparison would be I don't know if you remember the track Rebellion from The Hunting Party.
Love that song.
Vaguely.
Love that song.
Yeah, this is kind of like a precursor to that in the rhythm section.
Yeah, I think that's a good way. That's a good analogy, and it's a great song, by the way. I actually just heard it this afternoon as well, first time, and I think I didn't look up the title because I was walking on the street at that point in time, so it was just playing. And while I was listening to it, I was like, "What is this song?" Like, I need to look up the title, and then because it turned out to be my favorite of the unreleased ones as well. I feel like it's and I think Mike already said the appropriate thing. It feels like the bridge between Meteora and Minutes to Midnight. It really does feel like the perfect marriage of those two in a way. You know, the best of those two.
Okay, yeah. I've only honestly really heard Lost and Fighting Myself. So I really just have opinions of those two songs, and both of them pretty much are largely the same. I just go, man, it is kind of nice to hear Chester again, at least one more time. Even if he's not here, I still can't help but go, you know, it's nice to hear him one last time and hear something new from the guy.
Yeah. Overall, that's kind of my sentiment on, you know, the packaging of this material. That, you know, as we've kind of stressed, music and art is how any individual kind of achieves immortality by leaving something behind for the whole world to enjoy.
Mm-hmm. And to find emotional catharsis. And I mean, like, people still to this day, for a long time to come, someone's gonna find one of the songs on this is gonna say, "This song really helps me. This song means a lot to me," and that's gonna go on for a while. And I love that. I love that legacy.
Yeah, I mean, even if I did mention this when we were talking about Easier to Run, that, you know, even if I'm not a bigger fan of a lot of the later records, I will say this: if there's anything that kind of bridges somebody's gap getting into rock, or even, you know, going as far as discovering just flat out heavy metal as a result, jamming Linkin Park, I say it can only be a good thing. And I'm, you know, at least happy to live in a time period where, you know, if Linkin Park was somebody's first rock band or somebody's first exposure to metal, and then, you know, going further and further down the rabbit hole, their existence has helped more than hurt.
Yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
You know, there are a lot of, or at the very least, a handful of, you know, newer bands that came up like 10, 15, even 20 years after this record, who definitely sort of wear like their love for this band on their sleeves. And, you know, like, that's like good on them that this was sort of part of their upbringing.
Mhm.
Yeah, I don't really know too much else to add. Just at least it was something healthy for music at that point, and kind of just had bridged that gap, I guess you could say.
For sure.
One more thing I want to mention just briefly, even though it wasn't attached to this collection, but like a small part of sort of the promotion for this album was the next year, Linkin Park and Jay-Z had a pretty notable collaboration called Collision Course.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm only bringing
Which,
this up because a few of the tracks are remixes from Meteora, and I think, going back to what we said about Numb, like it became Linkin Park's biggest hit, not just the first time, but twice combined with Jay-Z's Encore.
Which I was just gonna say, it is kind of weird that this isn't part of it, like part of the entire 20th anniversary box set. Like, I get Collision Course came out, you know, 19 years ago rather than 20, but considering that it is kind of closely associated with this album to some degree, kind of weird that it's omitted. But at the same time, I get it. But I also am kind of going, I don't see this getting like a huge deluxe reissue either.
Yeah,
mm-hmm.
I think, like, you know, legal nonsense aside, I think the problem is, like, it's just too small of a release, like, to justify a, you know, a reissue of the same pomp and
Mm-hmm.
circumstance.
I was actually going to say, I was thinking about this last night. I was thinking, man, is it possible that it might be Jay-Z holding things up? But no, now that I'm thinking about it, maybe it's probably something to do with MTV, because it was something that, you know, MTV got involved with both Shinoda and Hove to do this project together.
Yeah, and something I find kind of hilarious about this whole thing is, I remember Shinoda saying, you know, when doing some interviews about this, is, you know, even though this was like MTV's idea, like, they had no idea what, you know, what these two entities were going to do with this project. But, you know, this was something that Shinoda was like already kind of an expert at. How he kind of got his start producing by taking like two different songs and remixing them together. So this was already sort of like a mini passion project. But the reason why we only got this one EP as opposed to an entire series of mashups was because Linkin Park and Jay-Z did such a good job with this that nobody else could top it.
Yeah, it is one of the few remix albums that you kind of go, a lot of this really does work super well together, especially the version of Gigawatt and Faint. Like on my initial listen, I'm like, okay, how is this gonna go? Because it sounds more like just Gigawatt again. But then but then eventually it cuts into that sample and then drops right into Faint pretty well. And then you're like, oh, okay, I see what they're going for.
Yeah,
Plus, any excuse
go
and
ahead.
any excuse to hear the big pimpin' beat is a good excuse.
Yeah. Shaurya, do you have anything to add?
No, I'm just listening to what you guys have to say. Collision Course was actually something that I heard a little bit later, so I can't say I have a ton of nostalgia for it as much as others do. Mostly because I got into Jay-Z a little bit later as well in the game. And but yeah, it was a great compilation. That's all I can actually say about it from my end.
I have about as much nostalgia for this as I do with Live in Texas, because this was another release that came with a DVD that had like the whole like behind the scenes documentary of how they put this thing together. And then they had the MTV broadcast version of the concert at the Roxy Theater. And you know, pretty like the last thing I have to say before we kind of do our final thoughts, like regarding this project, there's nothing about it that was half-assed. Like, like, like the record itself only took like a few days to record because it was only 6 tracks, but they still put forth like a genuine effort to make this something worth it for both Linkin Park fans and Jay-Z fans, and that's one of the reasons why it's so fondly remembered. So as we're winding down this discussion, do you guys have any sort of final thoughts on this era of Linkin Park and just the overall legacy of Meteora?
Not massively. I kind of attribute a lot of my feelings again to nostalgia, and again, it just brings back a lot of good memories for me, just going like, oh, I remember seeing this and really enjoying this, and to have it still hold up as well as it does, a lot better than a lot of bands from that time period and a lot of acts from 2003 even, just to have it be as good as it was back in 03, and then just having a really cool reissue to go along with it, with the Live in Texas DVD being pressed onto vinyl, even including unreleased stuff to make it a worthy and justified purchase. And it's a healthy thing for metal because it gets people talking about a rock band at least, rather than just having something that just sounds like an older act, or having something that is a legacy act that, should have, retired at least 10 years ago at this rate. You kind of can't help but go that, yeah, if this is somebody's first exposure to a harder rock band, I say it's only a good thing.
Yeah, no, I have to agree with that. Like I know for a fact that Linkin Park was my gateway into, the heavier side of music. Chester's harsh vocals kind of got me ready for, the new wave of American heavy metal, from like 2004 to 2007, then moving up to, bands like Aborted or Whitechapel, or the more extreme side of things. But it all kind of started with Linkin Park sort of carving a path to get there.
This would have been a perfect opportunity, Mike, for you to make the joke. You should have said it started with you one thing. You don't know why. I couldn't help it after you said that. I'm not sorry.
Hey, don't. Hey, it's all right. No, that's the game. That's the game. This game.
Shaurya, do you have any final thoughts?
I mean, everything you said about legacy. I think, like I said, it's been really cool talking to other fellow fans of Linkin Park, and then eventually learning more about how they've come around to accepting this one as their favorite album and how it's grown on them. I feel like everything with Linkin Park, to some degree, there is this aspect to it where it takes some time to sort of set in, but once it does, it really has this really profound effect. This especially happened with A Thousand Suns. I remember at first it wasn't the easiest listen, but then over the last 10, 12 years since it came out, almost 13 now, Jesus, it's gotten so much more. It's gotten so much more love all of a sudden. And there's more of a an appreciation for it. And I think the same thing is for Meteora, and it has had such a significant impact on, like, even in pop culture. I mean, there are so many songs from this that come up every now and then. We just mentioned The Matrix, the sessions in The Matrix. And I personally still really, really love the album. I think the new reissue, which they've done right now, is especially great. And we mentioned the gapless transitions, the way they've handled that, they've improved on it. I think it makes it a much more seamless listen. And I'm excited for people who may have never heard of Linkin Park, which, believe it or not, there are a few people I've met who are just like, what's Linkin Park? Like, oh. And if that's the case, I hope you get around to, somehow listening to this, whether it be on the radio or someone else talking about it all of a sudden. And if you hopefully that they enjoy it just as much.
Yeah, any opportunity to get new fans into the band, I'm very happy that this could be their opportunity. But believe that's a wrap on this episode. Before we get out of here, Shaurya, first of all, thank you for joining us. It was really cool having you on board to talk about Linkin Park. Where can we find you online?
So thanks so much for having me, guys, once again. If you want to find me, I am on pretty much every social media, but the two places I'm mostly prominent, one is Twitter, which is @_Shaurya Chavla. You can find me pretty easily. It's just my name. I'm also a film critic, and I talk about shows and some games every now and then on YouTube, which is under my name as well. Check out the channel. Lots of fun stuff happening there at the time. And almost hitting 2,000, so very excited about that. And hope to see you guys over there.
All right. And Nick, where can everyone find you?
Mainly Super Saiyan Death Metal God on Instagram. I mostly just post whatever albums I'm listening to, movies, video games I'm going to be playing, just whatever piques my mood at that time, especially because just today as well also is the release of the Aggression Sessions, which me and Mike are also hoping to do a jukebox episode on. It's a split EP of Thy Art is Murder, Fit for an Autopsy, and Malevolence, kind of a sequel to another EP that they did with the Acacia Strain about 5-6 years ago now. But yeah, really awesome EP. Go jam that as well. So, and go shoot my page some likes and some follows, please.
All right. And you guys can find me on Twitter at CaptainK42. You can check out my quick thoughts on letterboxd.com/CoachK42. And you can follow Renegade Pop Culture on Facebook and Twitter at Ren Pop Culture. You can also find us on YouTube, on Podchaser. Subscribe to our Patreon at patreon.com/Renegade Pop Culture. You can listen to all of our podcasts on Anchor, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, etc. And last but not least, everything can be found at renegadepopculture.com. You can escape, so do we. That'll do it for this episode of Renegade Jukebox. We will catch you guys later. Peace out.